Mr Deputy President, I move to take note of an answer by the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Abbott. What is shocking for the Australian community to know is that the Abbott government has instructed its officials overseas to oppose moves within the OECD's export credit group when they are moving to try to curb financial assistance for coal plants in developing countries. Australia is in there saying, no, don't do that, and blocking efforts for the OECD to reduce fossil fuel subsidies and coal plants in developing countries. What sort of a shocking outcome is that? Australia's gone rogue again in international fora, this time using its power to push coal in an era of climate change, and it's so obvious it is simply to prop up Australian coal exports. It's as simple as that. And what is really interesting, and Senator Abbott fell absolutely into the trap of the question today, what he got up and did was use exactly the same lines as the Prime Minister, as the Treasurer, Mr Hockey, as the Minister of the Environment, Greg Hunt, did, and all the lines are straight out of Burson-Marsteller, one of the biggest PR companies in the world that pushed cigarettes into Asia for years, acted for the tobacco industry, now acting for Peabody Energy. They're one of the largest coal producers in the world, an American-based company, and they came up with this idea that they would push energy poverty as being the world's #1 human and environmental crisis, and guess what? Coal is the answer. And the Prime Minister has clearly distributed this rubbish material, this public relations material from Burson-Marsteller for Peabody Energy, and pushed it, so it's now the talking points of Cabinet. Because when I asked Senator Abbott, he fell straight into it, jumping up talking about energy poverty, exactly the lines out of here, as indeed the Treasurer did last year when he stood up before the G20 and he came out and talked about his concern about global energy poverty and the need for coal. And what's even worse is the Treasurer, Joe Hockey, organised for Peabody Coal to give a presentation at the G20 for them to push their coal is good for humanity, coal is good for getting people out of poverty lines at the G20. Now we find they're doing it inside the OECD, and my question is, are they also doing it in negotiations with China over the new infrastructure bank? Because the investment mandate for that bank will be important. The World Bank is going off funding fossil fuel projects. The Asia Development Bank the same. What we've ended up with is now the OECD is moving to curb fossil fuel subsidies and stop the rollout of coal-fired power plants in developing countries. Australia is getting desperate, blocking the OECD moves, and no doubt will be looking to the China Development Bank, Infrastructure Bank, to see if they will allow money to be spent on coal-fired power stations. Because wouldn't that be a great thing, Mr President? Australia joins up to an infrastructure bank that's going to use funds to roll out coal-fired power stations, and guess what? Australia is a major exporter of coal into the region. It will be very interesting because China has taken a strong stand on coal and has capped coal imports into China and is massively going with renewables. But this is an extraordinary thing when you've got a situation where it's vote one Peabody Energy and cut out the middleman, and I'm referring here to the Abbott government. Why would you bother voting for the Liberal Party when you can vote straight for Peabody Energy and get it done? When I was first elected in Tasmania, the graffiti in Hobart was vote one North Broken Hill and cut out the middleman. That was referring to the then Premier of Tasmania, Robin Gray, the Liberal Premier. Then we had vote one guns and cut out the middleman. That was both Liberal and Labor premiers. Now we've got vote one Peabody Energy, vote one coal and cut out the middleman. That is exactly where we are going in this country, where the Abbott government is the wholly owned subsidiary of the coal industry, and we are seeing it. How else could you possibly justify the Treasurer of Australia at the G20 organising for Peabody Coal to give a presentation developed by Burson-Marsteller PR company for coal, in which their press release, at which the time they actually released this, cited the statistics for Australia. In their press release, they actually quote how much coal Australia has to export. So I'd be very interested to know what engagement the Australian government has had with Burson Marsteller and Peabody Energy, where the money has come from, who is talking to whom, because what is clear is that every time you hear a minister, this is what they're citing.